All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Uncle Adolf is in the house and he's going to be bringing the pain. He's coming for breakfast. So we're going to have breakfast with Hitler, we're going to have lunch with Hitler, then we're going to have dinner with Hitler. And by the way, he is a terrible, terrible house guest. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about the rise of German Nazism. We're going to see, folks, that the situation going on in Germany was very much like the situation going on in Italy. And if you haven't watched the video about the rise of fascism in Italy to kind of understand what's going on there, make sure you go to the previous modules, which would have been above in your student workflow, and check that out. So this particular presentation is going to basically look at what's going on in Germany, which ultimately leads to Hitler and the Nazis being accepted as the party that's going to lead Germany to greatness, to make Germany great again. So let's go forward. All right, so first of all, what is Nazism? So Nazism is like a variant of fascism, right? We see a lot of Mussolini's fascism in Nazism. It hates liberal democracy, it hates communism, it believes in elitism. The one major difference between what we see in Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany is the idea of racial policy. Now, this racial policy becomes ingrained into Nazi ideology at something known as the Nuremberg rallies, where they pronounce or decree the Nuremberg race laws. And we'll see more of that as we move on. So basically what Germany and what Hitler wanted to do once Nazism is fully entrenched in that state beginning in 1933 is ethnically cleanse Germany, right? To expunge the Jew. And this is where we see those techniques of dictatorships coming into play here. When we looked at the techniques of dictatorships, we talked about how dictatorships all use the method of scapegoating, and the Jew becomes the scapegoat of Germany. Why? Why, Mr. Crosby? Why do we see the Jew be the target of the people of Germany, of the Nazi regime? Well, it's actually pretty simple, to be honest. It's because anti-Semitism existed in Europe basically before biblical times, right? And then, of course, you know, if you know the story of Jesus, right, the Jews ended up killing Jesus. So, I mean, there's a lot to consider here, but basically, anti-Semitism had been smoldering in Germany and Europe, Greater Europe, up till that point. All right, so some essential history here. Hopefully, based on your grade 11 experience in social studies, a lot of this should be review. In the previous learning module, I sort of mentioned this a little bit, but let's go over it in some detail here. So Germany, when it came to World War I, fought on the side of the Central Powers. There were two sides when it comes to World War I. There were the Entente powers, which featured Great Britain, France, the United States of America, Russia was in there as well. Excuse me. And then, of course, we have the Central Powers. On the Central Power side, we have Germany, right? The German Empire under Kaiser Wilhelm. We also have the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And then we also have the Ottoman Empire, and they're called the Central Powers because they're centrally located between France and Britain on one side, right, two of the Entente powers, and then Russia on the other side. So in the middle, right, centrally located between all them, are the Central Powers. Now, Hitler, he was a soldier when it came to fighting in World War I. Much like Mussolini, Hitler was a very proud soldier. He got swept up in that wave of nationalism that many people got swept up into when it came to World War I. Now, before Hitler was a soldier, before he enlisted with the German military, remember though, he was not German. He was in fact Austrian, right? He wasn't born in Germany, but he claimed and he believed that he had Germanic blood coursing through his veins, right? So he's got the blood going everywhere. And with that, guys, Hitler believed that the Germanic people were destined to sort of rule Europe at some point. And we'll see the evolution of this thinking later on. Anyways, as a young man growing up in Austria, he wanted to be an artist. He was not admitted to art school. And then he's sort of a drifter for a while in the city of Austria. And eventually he gets swept up into that nationalism that many young men get swept up into when it comes to World War I. Now, as a soldier, he was very, very good. He was a regimental messenger. He won not one, but two Iron Crosses, which is the highest military honor a soldier can receive. So yeah, he found purpose in fighting for Germany, right? This is where sort of he was awoken to the powers of nationalism. Now, continuing, Germany was largely saddled with the burden of the war. Why? Well, as it mentions on the slide, Austria-Hungary, right? If you know anything about your World War I history, you know that it was Austria-Hungary going after Serbia, which actually is considered to be the first instance of aggression when it comes to World War I. It's when Austria-Hungary attacked Serbia for the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip, a member of a Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand. That's where we see the outbreak of World War I. Now, with Serbia being attacked by the Austro-Hungarian Empire for the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, one of the most famous mustaches in the world, historically speaking. He's up there with like Bismarck and, Hitler, you could argue as well. But anyways, with the assassination, what we see is the alliance system kicks in. Once Serbia is attacked, that brings in their Slavic brothers, Russia. Once Russia gets pulled into the war against Austria-Hungary, the German blank check kicks in. And then we just see this whole host of nations being pulled into the war. Now, Austria-Hungary at the end of World War I dissolves into primarily three different nations. We see the formation of the new nation of Austria. We see the formation of the new nation of Hungary, and we also see the formation of a nation called Czechoslovakia, which doesn't exist today, right? In the year 2020, Czechoslovakia is no more, but it existed from 1918 forward up until post-Cold War. So, with Austria-Hungary dissolving, then the other central power was the Ottoman Empire. They also dissolved as well. The Ottoman Empire dissolves after World War I, and it becomes the independent nation of Turkey, called that because of its founder, Muhammad Ataturk. And with them being gone, well, who do you blame? The only one left is Germany. You blame Germany. So Germany gets the brunt of the blame. And because of it, the Versailles Treaty punishes Germany. And this is something that the French and the British explicitly want, but not the Americans, right? By now, it's 1919, right, when they start penning the Versailles Treaty. Russia leaves the war in 1917 because of the Russian Revolution. They're not really involved in this. But Woodrow Wilson of the American delegation at the Versailles Treaty, at the Paris Peace Conference, they don't want to punish Germany. They want a just and lasting peace, but this doesn't happen because Britain and France want to make Germany pay, and pay Germany does. So Germany is economically crippled by a host of factors related to World War I. It is mainly the economic situation in Germany which ultimately leads to the rise of Hitler and the Nazis, right? It is that economic crippling of Germany and the situation becoming very, very untenable for most people. That's why we see people put their faith in a young man, or I guess a middle-aged man, by the name of Adolf Hitler. All right, so really quickly, Versailles Treaty, a whole bunch of things that Germany has to abide by. So number one, they have to accept blame for the war, right? Again, they didn't start it, but they had to accept blame for it. This is called the War Guilt Clause, and it was a bitter, bitter pill to swallow, but nonetheless, what choice did Germany have in 1919? Additionally, Germany had to pay back something called reparations for the damage done during the war. Now, in the word reparation is the idea of to repair, to fix. So because Germany is the only Central Power left, they have to start paying money back to nations like Britain, France, Belgium, etc. In Europe in order to fix the damage that they did. Now, as far as the German military was basically neutered by the Treaty of Versailles. I like to think of Germany before the war as this strong, proud German shepherd, right? And along comes the Versailles Treaty and snip, there goes its virility, if you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, go online, watch the YouTube channel called Vet Ranch and watch them perform neuterings on dogs. So we get Germany told that they can't have submarines anymore. That was a British ask because of unrestricted submarine warfare in World War I. They're not allowed to have an air force. They could only have an army of 100,000 men, only 6 battleships, no troops allowed near the Rhineland. That area was to be demilitarized. And this is next to France. So all these things are levied upon Germany, and basically Germany after the Versailles Treaty is like just a shell of its former self. And lastly, Germany lost a ton of territory, which we'll see on the next slide. So let's check that out. All right, so Germany's lost land. So I'm gonna use my pointer here and try to explain what's going on. Okay, so let's look. So Germany is the state here in brown, right? You can see part of Germany here. You can see part of Germany here. So what's going on with the Versailles Treaty? So number one, Germany is told that they have to demilitarize the Rhineland. This is the Rhineland right here. This is the industrial heart of Germany. And as you can see, it basically borders Belgium and France to the west of it. Now, the Rhineland, to be demilitarized, it means that there's supposed to be no military presence in that land whatsoever. Remember that, because when Germany starts to beat the war drums in after Hitler gains power in 1933, one of the first things that Germany does is they basically put troops back into the Rhineland, and they basically say this to France and the United States and to Great Britain, right? They defy the Versailles Treaty. But anyways, that's one area that basically they lose some of their sovereignty towards, right? They're not able to do whatever they want in that area. Next, Austria. Austria right here to the south of Germany. Austria, after World War I, prior to the end of the First World War, there was a movement amongst the Germanic people, the Teutonic people, these people that later Hitler had called Aryan people. There was a movement where the Germanic people, the Teutonic people descending from up here in Northern Europe, they wanted to all join together into a sort of Germanic super state. And Hitler later gives it the term Groß Deutschland, or Greater Germany. So that union or Anschluss between Austria and Germany was forbidden. And one of Hitler's dreams as an Austrian was to unite the nation that he fought for in 1919, or sorry, in the First World War, from 1914 to 1918, with his home country of Austria. So remember that, right? Next, there was an area in the newly formed Czechoslovakia. This was created out of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, known as the Sudetenland. Sudetenland. And guys, this area called the Sudetenland contained ethnic Germans. And again, one of Hitler's goals was to unite all Germanic people together under this thing called Großdeutschland, Greater Germany, right? Unite the Aryan people. This took Germans away from Germany. This meant now that Aryan people, Teutonic people, were living in a Slavic state called Czechoslovakia. Hitler was not happy about this. And then there is the I would argue the largest thorn in the side of Hitler and many Germans was this area right here, known as the Polish or Danzig corridor. You can see the nation of Poland right here. Poland is, or was, sorry, a landlocked nation. Landlocked nations don't benefit from international trade at the same level that non-landlocked nations do. When you have access to the sea, you have access to shipping routes, and that's good for your economy. So during the Versailles Treaty, Poland asked the delegate in Versailles if they could get access to the sea in the north up here. And in order to do that, what the Allies did is they carved out a chunk of Germany right here and gave it to Poland. So now we have the unique situation of Germans being separated from Germans. You can see East Prussia right there, which was a state in Germany, is now basically landlocked amongst Poland, and then you have the sea up here. And Hitler actually calls this the crime of Danzig. He is not happy about this. You now have Germanic people living in Poland, and this was inconceivable. So all of these things here ultimately lead to, and we see Hitler start to defy each one of these things as we march towards 1939 and the beginning of the Second World War. All right, now the Jewish stab in the back. What's going on here? The Jewish stab in the back, guys, was a widely circulated piece of propaganda which was created by people who wanted to explain away why Germany was punished. So this again comes down to scapegoating, right? Germans couldn't accept that they lost the war. So to explain why they lost, a theory emerged that, you know, the signers of the Versailles Treaty, the Weimar Republic, and we'll learn about them more as we move on here. The Weimar Republic was the government of Germany at this time. After the fall of Kaiser Wilhelm and the First German Empire. The Weimar Republic is called as such because it's located in Weimar, Germany. Anyways, the Weimar Republic, so goes the fable, so goes the story, was mainly composed of Jews. And these Jews wanted to basically destroy Germany. So as you can see in this particular piece of propaganda, you have the Jew, notable with the obviously Star of David on his hat here, who's about to plunge a knife into the back of the stoic German soldier. So Germans were told that we didn't lose the war. In fact, it is the Jew who stabbed us in the back. It is the Jew who sold us out. And of course, this makes Germans feel better, right? They have someone to blame now. And later, what this does is when Hitler starts to point fingers at Jews and target them for extermination, well, again, going back to this idea that Jews sold Germany out, well, then when you start to see your Jewish neighbor get targeted and a Jewish family down the street gets scooped up by the Nazis, well then they're owed it, right? Like this is their own doing because of what they did to Germany. All right, now what's going on in Germany economically speaking, as far as why Hitler and the Nazis eventually gained power? Well, number one, guys, unemployment in Germany by beginning in 1930 becomes massive. And I want you guys to understand this. As the economic situation in Germany becomes worse, the popularity of Hitler and the Nazis takes off like a German V2 rocket. So unemployment in Germany hits about 30%, which is not good. You always, as a rule of thumb, want to keep unemployment under at least 10%. Once you hit double digits, you have problems, right? Prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, unemployment in the United States, for example, was like around 3%. Here in Canada, it was about 4.5%. So we were doing pretty well. And guys, in Germany, prior to 1929, the beginning of the Great Depression, which again starts in America but filters out to everybody, by 1930, the economic situation in Germany with unemployment is becoming very, very bad, for lack of a better term. So this definitely factors in to the popularity of Hitler and the Nazis. And we'll see a graph on the next page. Now, the next major issue that we see in Germany is this thing called hyperinflation. Now, what is inflation? Inflation is a normal, well, not normal, but it is a economic phenomenon where a dollar today buys you less than a dollar yesterday. So when I was a kid, I remember you could go to the store and buy a chocolate bar for like 75 cents to a dollar. Now, you go to Safeway, you go to Sobeys, you go to Superstore, and you're paying like $1.50 for a chocolate bar. I remember when my mom was still alive, she would tell me stories about how when she was a kid, a bag of chips and a pop was like 50 cents, right? And now, you're going to pay $2-3 for something like that. So anyways, inflation happens, right? And as long as wages keep up with inflation, if this is wages and this is inflation, as long as, right, inflation goes up and then wages keep up with inflation, it's no big deal. You're no poorer or no richer as long as that wages keep up with inflation. However, in Germany, the inflationary rate outstripped increases in salaries, and the situation in Germany became very, very tense. Your money basically became worthless. Now, the question is, why did this happen? And we'll look at that here in a second. Why else were Germans upset? Well, obviously the Versailles Treaty, right? That war guilt clause. They are angry, really, really angry about the Versailles Treaty, right? If I was a German and I heard, the Weimar Republic signed this thing called the War Guilt Clause, I would be like, "Nein!" Right? I would not be happy. And then, right, the Weimar Republic coming into power in 1919 to 1933, they were a socialist liberal democracy, but they were failing to make life better in Germany. If you remember your Russian history, right? After the February Revolution, prior to the October Revolution, Russia had a brief 9-month flirtation with liberal democracy, right? Russia was touted as, one of the great liberal democracies of the world under the leadership of I'm losing it here, guys. I'm losing it here. The Kerensky Provisional Government. There we go. All right. So what happens when you get old? The brain starts to slow down a little bit. Anyways, guys, Germany didn't go from from Kaiser Wilhelm straight to Hitler, right? We had 14 years of liberal democracy in Germany, and it failed ultimately. And as times get bad, I want you guys to think about this. As times get bad, people who are generally moderate on the political or economic spectrum, more so political, as they are, as times are good, they're rather centrist. But as times get bad, that's when they move out to the extremes, whether it's the far left or the far right? Whether it is communism or fascism. In the case of Germany, instead of going to the left, we go to the right. All right, so this particular graph here, ladies and gentlemen, demonstrates German unemployment after World War I. Now, it's not great from 1920 up until 1928, 1929, but it is this part right here that we really need to focus on. So again, between 1928 and 1930, where the graph starts to take off, we of course have 1929. What happens in 1929? Well, stock market crash, right? Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929. That begins, right? Starts to kind of kick off the Great Depression. And the Great Depression, as I said, starts in America. It's like throwing a big rock into a lake, but it ripples out to everybody. And Germany is no exception. Also, America actually helped the nation of Germany pay back the reparations at one point. At one point, there were a lot of tensions between France and Belgium and Germany because Germany's not paying back reparations. So America in 1924 begins something called the Dawes Plan. And the Dawes Plan is named that because it's named after the American banker who thought it up, named Charles Dawes. The Dawes Plan pumps money into Germany and helps them pay back the reparations. But in 1929, when the American economy flatlines, America ends the Dawes Plan because their economy has just gone down the toilet. So because America doesn't have money to lend Germany, Germany's in trouble, right? Their economy basically drops like a German paratrooper going out of a plane without a parachute. So this is not a good situation. Now, hyperinflation, right? You combine the unemployment and hyperinflation, and you have a pretty terrible situation here in Germany. So we talked about what inflation is, right? It's where a dollar today buys you less than a dollar yesterday. It's not a good thing. And as you will see here, guys, the amount of money that it takes to buy $1 from 1919 to 1923 becomes absolutely ridiculous. So beginning in April of 1919, right, sort of our baseline here, it takes 12 German marks to buy $1, right? 12 to 1. All right. So December of 1919, so we're now 8 months down the road, it takes 47 marks to buy $1. By the end of December, it's 7,000. Things are getting bad in Germany. Now, fast forward about 4 years, right? January 1923, it is now 17,000 marks to buy $1. By July, so 7 months later, it's 53,000. Wow, this is getting ridiculous. Keep your socks on here because it's going to keep going. August 1923, so the next month, 4.6 million marks to buy $1. Basically, guys, the German economy at this point is now free falling, right? It is free falling. It's like, you ever watch those horror movies where people get into the elevator and all of a sudden the elevator is just like, boom, right? It's gone. Now, by October of 1923, 25.2 billion marks to buy $1. By November, the next month, it's 2.1 or 2.2 trillion. And then at the epitome of German hyperinflation, it's 4.2 trillion German marks to buy $1. Now, the question that some of you might be asking is, hey, Mr. Crosby, why did this happen? Why did the German economy become gutted? What caused this? Well, it's actually a pretty simple explanation. Let's talk money for a sec. Money has value because of scarcity. When something's scarce, it means there's not a lot of it. Technically speaking, right, when you compare, let's say, the value of a $20 bill to the value of a $5 bill, the reason a 20 is worth about 4 times more than a 5 is because there's about 1/4 the number of 20s in circulation. The reason a $100 bill is worth more than a 20 is because there's about 1/5 the number of hundreds in circulation as there are 20s. So it's all based upon supply and demand. Everyone wants it, but there's a low supply of it. Now, to pay back the reparations that Germany owed to Great Britain, France, Belgium, etc., the Weimar Republic decided, what we're going to do is we're going to pay back reparations by just simply printing more money, right? Oh, we owe billions of marks or pounds in reparations. Pfft, why not just print more money? Well, the reason you can't do that is, again, when you increase the monetary supply in a society, what that does is it instantly devalues that currency based upon the dictates of supply and demand. So literally, the Weimar Republic caused hyperinflation because they simply printed more money to pay back reparations. Dumb. Okay, anyways, at the bottom of this slide, guys, you have a link there at the bottom that explains German hyperinflation. So make sure you check that out. So ultimately, guys, as I mentioned, it was caused by the Weimar Republic, right? We get this, right? This lack of scarcity makes the currency become worthless or worth less. You like that? Okay, we have some images here of, right, German mark notes, right? There were so many out there in society that children were taking stacks of mark notes and just using them as building blocks, right? Like, that's potentially billions and billions and billions of marks right there. And it's not even worth the paper that it is printed on. As you can see in this image right here in the middle, it says in 1923, a German housewife burned mark notes in her kitchen stove since it was cheaper to burn marks than to use them to buy firewood. It was just so plentiful and had no value, but it burns well, that this is how you heat your home. Look at over here. Look at this pile of marks in the gutter. Man, I tell you what, if I saw that, I would be like elbowing people to get in there and get those marks. I don't even care if those are five mark notes, you know what I mean? Like if they had a value of like $5, I would be in there getting that money. And then on the bottom, you see these German children playing with a kite made out of mark notes. I in fact had a friend who used to have old German hyperinflationary mark notes. And I mean, there was like $100 million bills and they were worth nothing. The numbers on them were inconsequential, right? They had no real value. All right, now, last couple of slides here, Hitler's goals. So guys, Hitler had a number of goals for Germany. Once his political ambition becomes clear, he has a number of expressed goals. So number one, if you want to be a popular politician, you play to the anger of people in society. So one of the things that Hitler promised to do was to destroy the Versailles Treaty, right? This is primarily, according to Hitler and many Germans, this is responsible for the misery in Germany. Number two, it was the Jews who stabbed us in the back when it came to the Versailles Treaty, so we're going to destroy them, right? We're going to destroy the Jew. We're going to ethnically cleanse these individuals out of our society and also out of Europe, right? And of course, this plays out in the Holocaust, right? The death of 6 million Jews. Number three, Hitler wants to unite all Germanic people, right? So all those people in Czechoslovakia, right, the Sudetenland, he wants them back. All those people in the Polish corridor, the people in Austria who Hitler considers to be Germanic, right? Ethnically speaking, they are. And he wants to create this 1,000-year Reich. The word Reich means empire. So Hitler believed it was the destiny of the Aryan people to have this 1,000-year empire. And of course, this idea of uniting the Germanic people was known as, and the word is right there, beautiful word, Großdeutschland. You got to say it with the rolled R. Say it with me, Großdeutschland. All right, number 4, Hitler also wanted to expand German living space, or the term that we have here is Lebensraum. Say it with me, Lebensraum. Lebensraum is going to come from primarily the East. When we talked about principles or beliefs, goals of fascist states, right? Prior to this, we talked about how fascists see the world as sort of a dog-eat-dog world. This is social Darwinism. Either you conquer or you are conquered. So by imperializing, by taking over the land of other nations and taking their resources, you secure what your nation needs. And remember, guys, the goal of every fascist state is to strengthen that state or nation. So when you gain living space, you gain resources, you gain people, and that adds to the strength of the nation. And then number 5, destroy the threat of communism in Germany. Now, I haven't touched upon this, but there was in the sort of tumultuous times after World War I, there were a number of socialist/communist parties in the nation of Germany, right? There was a group called the Räterepublik, or the Bavarian Soviet Republic, which was looking to gain power. And this freaked out a lot of German industrialists, right? Like owners of business and stuff like that. So they put their support behind Hitler. When we talked about fascism before, and just as a reminder, fascism accepts the ownership of private property. And the reason for that is because it's been demonstrated time and time again that when you allow individuals, people, right, owners, to control the means of production rather than the state, it creates a stronger economy. That stronger economy leads to more strength in the nation. So one of the things that Hitler promises for the nation of Germany is to destroy the threat of communism, right? To get rid of that red menace. Now, really quickly, the evolution of the Nazi Party. So originally, guys, Hitler didn't start the Nazi Party, right? And originally, before it was called the Nazi Party, it was called the GWP, the German Workers' Party. And it was led by a man by the name of, at least when Hitler becomes the leader of it, it was led by a man by the name of Anton Drexler. So after World War I, Hitler actually is a spy for the Weimar Republic. He still wants to serve his country as a good soldier. So the Weimar Republic, you know, like any good government's kind of keeping track on who's doing what in the state, right? Looking for political agitators. And Hitler is assigned by the Weimar Republic to investigate this group called the German Workers' Party. And while he's investigating it, right, he starts to go to some of their meetings in beer halls and things like that. He likes what he sees. And in 1919, he joins the group, right? And this group consists of largely unsatisfied World War I veterans who felt like Germany should have got a better fate when it came to the Versailles Treaty. Now, he quickly became very popular amongst people in the German Workers' Party. And then in 1921, he is asked by Anton Drexler to become the leader of this party. Now, why did Hitler become so popular with the German Workers' Party? The reason for it, guys, is because of his strong public speaking skills, his oration ability. He is an incredible public speaker. When Hitler spoke, people listened, right? They paid attention to what he had to say. So if you click this link, right, like you should, this kind of shows you how, right, originally Hitler is kind of like not too sure about public speaking, but as time goes on, he becomes much better at it. This is a very famous image from Nazi folklore, and it's called "In the Beginning There Was the Word." And you can kind of see how everyone is intently focusing on Hitler, right? The way the light shines on him, and everyone is just captivated by what he has to say. And then we have a real picture here of, members of the Nazi party. You can see Hitler sitting right there. And again, people just, they listen to him, they pay attention to him. So that is it